Good day and welcome to this feedback video. I will be taking you through Task D of the December 2023 Assessment of Professional Competence Exam. Our presentation will be structured as follows. Number 1. We will unpack what the pre-released information was, focusing on what the candidates should have picked up as triggers, started thinking about, or researching during the 5-day preparation period. Number 2. We will then consider what information was presented on the day, and whether that information supported or was in addition to what was provided in the pre-released information. Lastly, we will then focus on what the task was, i.e., what the required was, that the candidates had to respond to be graded as competent on the task. Right, let us get into it. As a starting point, on page 5 and 6 of the pre-released information, or as part of the background information, candidates should have taken note of who the shareholders of OT were, their respective percentage holding, etc., and the relationship that some of the shareholders had with OT. Similarly, candidates should have taken note of who the directors of OT were, or the company's board composition, and some apparent relationships between directors, shareholders, and OT. For example, candidates should have picked up that Simon, who is a director at OT, is married to Sharon, a well-known personality in the South African travel industry and the CEO of RSA Travel, a leading online travel agency. On page 7 of the pre-released information, selected financial information was presented, which painted a picture of how OT makes their revenue, i.e., through ticket sales, other revenue, etc., and the associated costs thereof, which include passenger service charges, landing and parking fees, amongst others. We will unpack as we go along how or why this information, amongst other information, was of particular importance in this task. It was also highlighted that On Time procured a software as a service (SaaS) solution called PASSYS for its passenger service system from an international software group. This cloud-based system incorporates a reservation system, customer relationship management, travel agent management system, a full e-commerce website, fares management software, and check-in and gate control systems. Now, let us get into where the crux of Task D was sitting. Task D was sitting in document 5 on page 14 of the pre-released information, which was an email from the CFO, Sergel, to the financial analyst. On the email, the CFO mentions that because the ticket revenue is such a significant line item, it is bound to be an area of focus for the auditors. As a result, the CFO has requested the data analyst to extract the total rand amount of flight bookings and cancellations from PASSYS so that he can compute a theoretical revenue figure for the 11-month period ended the 30th of November 2023, which will then be reconciled to the actual revenue figure reflected in our trial balance at the 30th of November 2023. To prove the accuracy of the revenue figure that is sitting in the trial balance. The CFO then presented the recon, which starts from the revenue as per the booking system of 978 million rands, added back the prior year's deferred revenue of 38 million rands, less 30 million rands worth of the current year's deferred revenue and 50 million rands for cancellations or refunds processed. This resulted in theoretical revenue of 935 million rands. However, when the CFO then compared this theoretical revenue amount to the revenue per the trial balance of 936 million rands, there was an unknown or unreconciled difference of 1.5 million rands between the theoretical and actual ticket revenue figures. The CFO then goes on to say even though this difference may not be that material from an external audit perspective, given the magnitude of the revenue figures, the CFO would appreciate the financial analyst applying their auditing skills to find the causes of the 1.5 million rands difference. Candidates, at this point, could have started thinking about or researching the following. Number 1. Obtaining an understanding of the IFRS 15 requirements around the recognition and measurement of flight ticket revenue. Number 2. What type of accounting adjustments can be made against ticket revenue in the accounting records, apart from deferred revenue, and lastly, what the possible differences are that could occur in ticket revenue between the accounting records and the actual ticket booking system. In the next paragraph, the CFO then further informs that financial analyst that OT has experienced exceptional growth since its incorporation 3 years ago. However, he doesn't think that the systems of internal control and business practices have kept pace with this growth. The CFO then requests the financial analyst to assist with evaluating OT's systems of internal control, particularly that relating to revenue, which will hopefully help to avoid any recurrence of unaccounted for differences going forward. During the 5-day preparation period, candidates could have started thinking about and/or researching the following. Number 1. What are some of the weaknesses in the revenue system that can contribute to differences between the accounting records and the booking system? Number 2. How transactions get initiated from start to finish for ticket revenue, i.e., a revenue system description, to identify possible risks and weaknesses that could result in differences in ticket revenue. Now, let us consider the information that was presented to the candidates on the day, and whether that information supported or was in addition to what was provided in the pre-released information. Information presented to the candidates on the day was in document D on page 10, where the CFO gave further information on the unaccounted for difference issue, which was introduced in the pre-release period. He further mentions that he asked Julio Oliveira to prepare a reconciliation to account for the 1.5 million rands difference. The reconciliation was then presented. Candidates should have noted that the starting point of the reconciliation that was presented on the day was the theoretical revenue amount of 935 million rands, and not the rand amount of total flight bookings made from the 1st of January 2023 to the 30th of November 2023, according to the booking system, of 978 million rands, and the revenue per the trial balance of 936 million rands. i.e., the reconciliation on the day was reconciling the 1.5 million rands difference. This reconciliation was also presented with accompanying notes for some of the reconciling items, which we will get into the details of a little bit later. Candidates should have also noted that, out of the 7 reconciling differences, only 5 had the accompanying notes. In summary, in the pre-released information, the candidates were provided with a reconciliation between the revenue from the flight booking system and the accounting system, which resulted in a difference of 1.5 million rands, which the CFO could not resolve or explain. On the day, a recon of the 1.5 million rands was presented, with accompanying notes, for which the task was based on. Before we look at the accompanying notes to the reconciliation that was provided on the day, let us first consider what the financial analyst or the candidates was ultimately tasked with in Task D. The last paragraph on page 11 then introduces what the task was, which the candidate was expected to respond to. Sergel requested the financial analyst or the candidate to consider the following: whether the candidate had any concerns regarding the content of this reconciliation. If so, the candidate was requested to please document these concerns, as Sergel would like to discuss these concerns with the CEO at their weekly briefing as part of his update to the CEO regarding the following. 1. Preparedness for the 2023 external audit, and 2. The effectiveness of OT's corporate governance arrangements and systems of internal control. Having gone through the pre-released information on the day and the task, we will now look at the accompanying notes to the recon, focusing on whether there are any concerns regarding the content of the reconciliation. We will now focus on the accompanying notes to the reconciling items, discussing what the candidates could have picked up as possible concerns regarding the content of the reconciliation, talking to the preparedness for the 2023 external audit, and the effectiveness of OT's corporate governance arrangements and systems of internal control. For flight ticket cancellations, it was stated that Jim Jackson concluded an agreement with RSA Travel in January 2023 whereby the travel agent has the right to select and purchase tickets at highly discounted prices for flights for up to 12 months into the future, and has the right to request a refund of such tickets, if unsold within 48 hours of the scheduled flight time. Furthermore, the ticket numbers to be refunded must be communicated in writing to Jim, whereafter a credit note is issued to RSA Travel. The amount on the reconciliation, therefore, reflects the total credit notes issued to RSA Travel thus far during FY 2023. From the above, candidates should have picked up, questioned the following. 1. Whether Jim Jackson, who is the head of sales and marketing, has the necessary authority to conclude such an agreement on behalf of OT. 2. RSA Travel is related, by virtue of Simon, a director at OT, being married to Sharon, probably resulting in highly favorable terms. Could this be a conflict of interest? Auditor increased focus. 3. Is there a lack of supporting documentation that supports the flight ticket numbers to be refunded, as credit notes are issued based on ticket numbers communicated directly to Jim? The next reconciling item relates to the market value of free tickets issued to customers for inconveniences experienced on on-time flights, e.g., flight delays, poor service, which was debited to marketing expenses. Even though there was no note dealing specifically with this reconciling item, candidates could have discussed the fact that as the tickets are issued for free, there is no transaction price, and therefore no revenue should have been recognized for these flights from an IFRS 15 perspective. Furthermore, candidates could have also picked up that this amount was incorrectly debited to the marketing expense account. With regards to the passenger service charges, it was noted that passenger service charges for April 2023 due to the Airports Company South Africa, ACSA, were incorrectly journalized into revenue. Even though the bookkeeper correctly extracted the passenger service charges amount due to ACSA for April 2023 from the booking system, when recording the journal, she incorrectly credited this amount to the revenue account instead of to accounts payable, ACSA account. First and foremost, candidates should have picked up the fact that the incorrect journal occurred in April, and it was only identified in November, when the reconciliation was performed. Also, since this amount should not have been revenue in the first place, i.e., it was incorrectly journalized into revenue, candidates could have questioned whether this was a valid reconciling item here. Lastly, candidates could have also picked up the fact that from an internal controls perspective, there is a lack of review, or authorization, or segregation of duties in relation to the bookkeeper incorrectly posting journal entry to revenue. The next reconciling item related to the sale of non-refundable tickets recognized as revenue. Here, candidates could have mentioned the fact that Jim Jackson appears to be responsible for a lot of different things at OT, which then questions whether there is a lack of segregation of duties. Over and above that, candidates could have also highlighted that there is a governance concerns, or a possibility of fraud regarding Jim's abuse of power and influence over the accounting system, especially since he is authorizing sales and recognizing revenue prematurely, since the flight dates are from January to June 2024, purely to overstate revenue to meet sales targets. The reconciling item linked to Note 4 was the nominal amount paid by directors for 40 personal flight tickets purchased, which are issued by the CEO's personal assistant, Felicity Fouche. Felicity can capture flight bookings onto the booking system, and all such bookings are captured as having a nil ticket price. Furthermore, in terms of company policy, each executive director is entitled to book 15 personal flights per year, and an amount of R250 is payable for each such booking. These tickets are not transferable to anyone apart from these directors' immediate family members. For this reconciling item specifically, candidates could have highlighted concerns about the access right privileges of the PA, as she can book discounted price tickets on the system. Also, it is a concern that company policy was not adhered to, as a total of 40 flights was booked, instead of a maximum of 30, made up of 15 flights for each director. The second last reconciling item relates to test transactions recorded on the booking system, whereby fictitious transactions were recorded on the system. However, once the testing had been concluded, the development team neglected to remove this data from the system. Here, candidates could have questioned whether the correction of the test transactions is complete and accurate. On the other hand, candidates could have also picked up on the fact that the testing was inappropriately performed on the live system. The last reconciling item was the immaterial difference that is still not accounted for. Candidates could have highlighted that even though the amount on the reconciliation may seem immaterial, the amounts would need to be considered before netting them off, i.e., consider whether the debit and credits, respectively, are immaterial or not. Also, candidates could have also picked up that the existence of an unaccounted for or unreconciled difference might be an indication of a weak control environment overall. As it can be seen from the above, there is quite a lot that the candidates could have covered in as concerns regarding the content of this reconciliation. For candidates to be competent, the expectation was not for them to cover all the reconciling items. However, a fair or good coverage of any of the above issues was expected. This then concludes the feedback video for Task D. The next video will be taking us through what a competent script looked like for this task. Thank you so much for your time.